Hi, everyone, and thanks for being with us. So today we're going to discuss politics in Europe and see where the pendulum is at the moment. So I remember around 2012, the big news in politics in Europe was that the left is coming. It was the time of the anti-austerity protest in Greece. It was the time when Syriza and Podemos in Spain were gaining momentum. The slogan was Syriza, Podemos, venceremos. In France, we had Mélenchon. So the idea is that there's this left-wing tsunami about to take Europe. Some years later, the narrative changed, and now the idea was that there is this far-right populist revolt. And we had the examples of Orban, we had the examples of Liga in Italy, of what's the Freedom Party in Austria, and of course also in Netherlands we had the Party for Freedom, and not only. So where are we today? Between that, we also had the Brexit vote, so more talk about the right-wing populist movement in Europe. So basically the question we discussed today is there any option, is there any hope for freedom in politics in Europe? And if you want to take it a step further, is this hope is gonna come from the right, or do we need to start from scratch? Now, to discuss this topic, we have someone who is active in the freedom movement in Europe. He's also a student of objectivism, as you can say from his sweater. But also, and our guest is Yernaz. Let me make sure I pronounce your surname. Ramutarsing. Did I get it right?
It was close enough. Ramutarsing.
Ramutarsing. Okay. Well, take this from someone whose surname is never pronounced right. So hopefully we'll be sympathetic. And we have someone whose surname we can hopefully pronounce better. We have Mark Pellegrino co-hosting. Thanks for being with us, Mark. Mark also is active not only on the intellectual level, but on the political level with the Capitalist Party in the United States. So it's going to be some useful stuff. So Yernaz, first of all, where do you see politics today in Europe? So basically, are you optimist? There was some elections in Netherlands. So how do you see things? So compared to, let's say, 2012 or 2016, which is like these parts of this recent past I described, are you more optimist today, and where do you see things today?
Actually, I think the coronavirus really threw everyone off. I think it's really reset us a few years back. I actually think we haven't progressed that much. The right-wing parties are becoming way more right on culture, but they always forget about economics. That's the big issue in the Netherlands. And I also think it's a big issue in the UK, looking at the Tories and Boris Johnson and being green and all that. So we're basically seeing right-wing parties striking a deal, saying, you know what, if we go right on culture, we're basically good, because we're not going to be worse than the left on economics. So we can always scare people like, you don't want to vote left, right? So if we just give them the cultural stuff, they don't care about the economics, and we could do corona lockdowns, we could stifle freedom, be either protectionist or not, anything goes. So basically, because the left is so stupid, and because there's not enough Ayn Rand being read in right-wing circles, the right gets away with murder.
It's
what we have in the Netherlands.
The right
we have a guy, we have a prime minister who read Ayn Rand, who said he admired Ayn Rand.
Really?
Yes, actually, Mark Rutte, you can look it up. He was like, yes, I love the market. And he makes these jokes about left-wingers. Like, if you have left-wingers into the Sahara, there won't be any sand left in a year, right? Like, he makes those types of jokes. But at the end of the day, he's not going to cut taxes on a crazy level. He's not going to be ideologically pro-capitalism. Why should he? There is no reward. You know why? Because there's no electorate for it. Right-wing people have been bamboozled with Islam, with cultural things. And I understand those things are important, but we forgot about economics altogether. That's the biggest mistake. What I see on the right is people don't talk about economics because the left enables them to, and people don't care about it enough.
Okay, so I can sympathize with this. I can definitely see it in the UK. So what was happening, for example, in the summer is you have a Tory government which is slightly on the left of previous Labour governments,
Yes.
that had imposed one of the worst lockdowns in the world, and one that is actually bad in every way you can imagine. But suddenly they came out and said, oh, the left, the BLM protests are want to take down our statues. And they started saying some things about critical race theory. So basically they're throwing red meat to the right-wing base. And as you said, they sense that there's something there with immigration, with critical race theory, with Frankfurt School, cultural Marx, whatever. And again, there are discussions to be had on these issues, particularly the issue of the European Union, on who is to make these decisions and all that stuff. But what you see is exactly this, that they say, oh, we're gonna throw them this red meat and we're gonna get away, as you said, with murder. Mark, I wonder how similar this is to the States, because it used to be that the conservatives were a bit the opposite. So the idea was, look, we are constantly losing, the right would say, on the culture wars. And these are just these neoliberals who only care about numbers and how the stock market is going. And now we see this change also in the American right, where basically they want to prosecute the big tech or whatever, but at least they're very vocal against critical race theory and, quote, cultural Marxism. So would we say that there's something there that at least some people are waking up and understand the importance of culture and ideas? Or is this actually not understanding the importance of ideas because they have no ideas and they just throw slogans?
I would say it's the latter. I think there's a slight dawning on the part of the right, because the left's cultural influence is so extreme, and the ideas that they're propagating are so extreme that you can't help but come out against them. But the fundamental problem is an ethical one. I mean, our guest would say that the right is focusing on cultural issues and not economic issues, but the left is focusing on ethics, and their economics are downstream from ethics, and the right is trying to apologize for its economics and separate ethics from economics in a way that I think doesn't work for them. It makes them impotent. Here in the United States, I think we have we're becoming Europeanized in a lot of ways, but we have something that I don't think the European electorate has, which is an American sense of life, a very deep sense of individualism, and a very deep sense about the relationship between the individual and the government that no one in Europe really has. Even if they've read Rand, it's an abstraction to them, and to us, it's a concrete reality. And there's a large number of the electorate who has that sense of life still in them on both sides of the aisle. And that could be the reversal of fortune for us. That could be the thing that turns the tide, because that sensibility, which is being violated now, I think will spark an ethical revolution. That's what we need, is the revolution in ethics.
Right. But so you talked about sense of life, and basically what you mean in a way is what a culture, what is, let's say, this, what is the character of a culture? Now, don't quote me on this. This is not the objective understanding. This is me trying to explain it from the top of my head in simple words. So, Yarnaz, would you say, though, that in terms of this character of the culture in Europe, it's actually right-wing populism is selling? For example, if you're a Greek and you talk about, let's say, the battles against the Ottomans, or if you're even an Austrian or someone, you talk about these big battles of the past where Christianity faced the invaders and all that stuff. So it does in some way connect to something which looks like close to the level of ideas. So what they say is, look, it's Christianity that made this place what it is, and now it is under threat. So what do you think about this holy or unholy alliance that many around the freedom movement are making with traditionalists, or with people who are a bit more who are actually religious and they want Christianity to be the identity? Do you think this is a strategic mistake? Do you think that's a tactical choice? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's a tactical choice, but I have to say the Netherlands is one of the most atheist country, even in Europe. I think it's the Netherlands and Czech Republic. that are both like above 50% atheist. So like the Christian movement in the Netherlands, it's not that strong. Like there are some of them, and actually, you know, they watch American politics, so there is some influence from like the traditional parties, but it's not as big as, let's say, the US or Southern European countries. So Christianity is not like a big force in terms of politics in the Netherlands. So on the one hand, you would say that's a good thing, but on the other hand, people who might have been normally conservative could have been pulled into the right if they were Christians, and now they're not. So it also has a drawback for us that everyone's like an atheist, so they're very open to all variations of liberalism and not all the good ones.
So here's the problem then. The problem is that at least in Europe, secularism is linked to the left. So in a way, when I was growing up, I was saying, first I became an atheist and then I became a leftist. So the idea was, okay, I'm an atheist. Therefore, what's the obvious choice? Oh, these are the pro-science people. Therefore, obviously, I'm going to go to the left.
There's one thing though. In the Netherlands, it is not as much as what you say. I think it's more in other countries that have more Christians, where the left is more akin to secularism. In the Netherlands, the right is also pretty secular.
All right.
So that is a little difference with like the more Christian countries. I think that's like a little plus we have. On the other side, we don't have that sense of life as Mark described. And even though the Dutch invented capitalism and basically, you know, grew everything that was needed for the American Revolution, we have no sense of life like the Americans have. It's crazy. We should have had more of it.
Well, I'm not sure the Americans still have it, but anyway, that's another issue. Yeah. But here's also something else that I find very interesting. So Netherlands is a country that, because of its political systems, you can see smaller parties with ideas that are outside of the mainstream making a presence in central politics. And you also have some experience with actual politics, so to speak, in Netherlands. And because, again, I'm someone who, compared to the average person in the objectivist community, I'm way more convinced that change can come from... So I agree that politics is downstream from culture, but at the same time, I think that politics is more crucial than we realize, that it can also be the other way around, that politics can change culture. And we've seen this in history, that movements have actually pushed the political agenda of the country towards one direction. And an obvious example is Thatcher, that you cannot persuade me that the British culture was ready for Thatcher. It's not that it was the culture that gave rise to her. It was the distraction that was there, and she rode that wave. But then by riding this wave, also, she changed the culture in a way. Where I'm going with all this. Mm-hmm. So is it indeed the case that a country with a system which is like the one in the Netherlands, where you're going to find yourself with many parties in the parliament and that you have to make coalition governments, is it a good thing because then you're going to find smaller parties and then you can play an actual role in politics? Or, and for example, we could think of a party like Marx, for example, not Karl Marx, Mark Pellegrino's party, then playing a more active role rather than the system where you have in the States, where it's basically very, very difficult for the third party to make an entrance? Or is it that because it's so representative, at the end of the day, nothing happens because you always need to find some centrist consensus on the top?
Well, two things. At the end of the day, nothing really happens. That is true. But in the Netherlands, politics is the best echo chamber you can find. So I agree with you. If you want to influence the culture in the Netherlands, it's really good to be in parliament because you'll have like a guaranteed echo chamber. So that's like one really good thing about our system, how we set it up. On the other hand, the advantage of the US is that there you actually have an electorate that every single member of parliament has to have a responsibility for. So we don't have that. We have like nationwide parties who make up a list of 30 people. And it's not like call your congressman like they have in the US, right? Something's going wrong. The mayor made a crazy decision. Call your congressman, put them under pressure, tell them you won't give them any money. Like that's a very positive thing that the US has. And at least in Europe, I don't know, maybe some countries have it, but we don't have that because it's all nationwide. So you know, there are drawbacks, there are positives, but yes, in the terms of, I think in the Netherlands, if you get one seat in parliament, that's 70,000 votes. If you get one seat in parliament, you can really help shape a culture or introduce new ideas into the arena, and you could really move pretty quickly. You also see that all parties that come in, almost all of them grow. Almost all of them stay. It's really hard for a party to maneuver itself out of parliament. It's like a weird threshold. Once you're over it, you get the government money, you get the media, you get the entrenchment, you can hire people. Like, you really have to mess it up to get kicked out in 4 years. You're probably going to keep those 70,000 people that voted for you the first time, and big chance you're going to move up in the polls because people know you exist.
Right. But then,
yeah, I agree with you. Politics could change cultures.
Isn't though also the risk that then you become a bit institutionalized, that then your point is, okay, how do I keep this nice warm government money? And again, this is not to say that people are sellouts, but it's almost too alluring to say, look, I'm gonna stay here and I'm gonna make a change here, and then it becomes a slippery slope of I'm gonna sacrifice my integrity a bit.
Well, actually, that happened, and the party that I was listed for in the Netherlands, Forum for Democracy, actually based their whole existence almost totally on there being a cartel of parties. They actually made this critique. They said, like, listen, all these parties that are like handing out mayorships, because we don't have a chosen mayor in the Netherlands. I don't know why. All those parties like giving each other mayorship. Oh, you want to have the mayor of Rotterdam? I'll give you mayor of Amsterdam. Like, all those parties are forming a cartel. We call it like 10,000 people that are running the Netherlands. Basically 10,000 people working for government, in government, promoting each other, keeping each other's protected. So that happened, but but it did provide a chance for a new party to come in. So that is the positive aspect, that every 4 years there are going to be new parties coming in who can like maybe capitalize on some of the wrongdoings of other parties. So
I would be so tempted if I was living in such a system to be in politics. So Mark, okay, so give us also your take on this culture politics balance, and how or whether actually politics can have an effect on culture, maybe a bit more than the most people in our universe, I mean, not the in the political universe of objectivists believe.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I'm so different from the political universe of objectivists. I have seen politics have quite an effect on culture and history. I don't know that that's necessarily the case in America. I mean, you saw the birth of the Tea Party movement here, which sort of fizzled out and went nowhere because the culture, more or less, or the people who represent the institutionalized version of our culture were against it, and they propagandized against it. So the movement fizzled out. And the culture right now, our culture is right now dominated by the left. And I don't think that any objectivist type of movement can really get purchase until the culture starts acclimating to these ideas of individualism. It will go nowhere. So for us, culture is, I feel, first.
Right. Okay, and one last issue to throw on the table before we go to Clubhouse. So, Yernaz, you said also you had experience with practical politics. So, up to what point is it acceptable to make compromises? But compromise not in the philosophical term, because, for example, in my view, if someone tells me you'll have to vote for an income tax, but then we're going to give you some, I would say, okay, now I'm compromising, right? So at what point does this become a compromise, which is not really a compromise of your integrity and your principles? And at what point is this a sellout? And so, for example, if you have to be part of a party, a political party, and you can sense that we could make a difference. We could, let's say, take the income tax from 30% to 10%. And you realize that not everyone is an objectivist or whatever someone is. How do you navigate this water, the water of principles versus, I understand not everyone is exactly like me, and we're a political party here and we need to make some progress, so I'll have to put some of my principles on the back seat?
I think you have to look at what is like the long-term vision. That's what I'm looking at. So like, okay, this party wants there to be Dutch movies made, so they want to spend some government money to give to Dutch artists, because right now we're putting it in some public broadcasting agency that also wastes our money. You know what? If I'm in that party, I might be able to think, you know what? Let them have that. Let them have the 100 million for Dutch filmmakers. I don't care for it. I would never advocate for it. I think no one should be getting money to make movies. But if I'm going to calibrate that against like leaving the EU, leaving the euro, those are bigger things for me. So I think then I can make that decision. Then I could be like, okay, I could live with this. If they would form a government and the deal would be, we're still going to give some money to filmmakers, but we're going to advocate leaving the euro. Yeah, I think it's worth more for the country in terms of freedom ultimately. So that's how I would approach it. I think there's also a big difference if they want to violate new rights or if they don't want to stop violation of rights that are already institutionalized. I think that's also something I would look at. Like, are they like opening a new can of terrible ideas, or is it just that they're not able to escape the terrible box we're in?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And when I was speaking, when I was thinking out loud, I mentioned the income tax, but I realized, no, it's almost impossible to go today in politics, say, tomorrow I'm going to abolish the income tax. So this wouldn't make sense. So I wouldn't consider it that, oh, I'm a sellout if I mention that. So Mark, for example, in your, before we go to that, we have a super chat, says Razi. Razi, can you put on the chat, because I have no visual to the chat on YouTube. Usually it's Raka who does this, but today, I'm not doing a good job on that. Okay, so Mark, so how do you, okay, we have the question. I went to a Tea Party rally where one of the leaders was campaigning against abortion. That was my last Tea Party. But you see, that's the issue, that you're gonna have weird bedfellows in these movements. And the question is, again, how much do you tolerate? So for example, if someone told you, look, you're gonna have people who believe in abortion, but they're not going to put it in the political agenda. Do you say, okay, I trust them? Or do you then say, yeah, but then maybe if all these people have these crazy ideas, soon their cultural and their philosophical view is going to be on the party agenda. So it's very, very difficult. In particular, if you're in a difficult situation, like think about being in Greece in 2019, you've had 4 years of the left in power. So you say, I'm going to do everything to get rid of the left. And then you don't see that the liberals right were coming, who basically their political idols are Obama and Hillary and Joe Biden, but that's something else. Then you're saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to go with whatever they have with them. And then very soon you realize that, I shouldn't give these people any benefit of the doubt. Sorry, you were saying something.
Yeah, so I was always very vocal about loving Ayn Rand before I got into politics. And I wanted to do that also because once I'm in, even though I'm not talking about Ayn Rand, everybody knows that's that Ayn Rand guy. So there comes a certain point where I don't even need to say it. Just me being there means something about the ideas. You understand me? So yeah, where is the limit? Listen, if someone wants to forbid abortion, but he agrees with me that we should leave the euro, I can stand with him in an anti-euro rally. That wouldn't stop me because I think those two are far removed from each other.
But what if he has this on his political agenda? So it's this and this.
If he says, like, I want to get into politics and forbid abortion, but I also agree we should leave the European Union, yeah, I wouldn't like separate myself from that person by definition. I wouldn't not do something against Nexit with that person.
I think it's different whether that person would be in the movement or that person would have the policy making agenda of the movement. So I saw this, for example, in the Brexit in the UK, where you have left-wing people, right-wing people who most of them would have views that I would consider views that I would not agree on, rights violating things. But if it comes about coming together, let's say for the European elections, where there's one topic and that topic is this, And the example is the Brexit party. I could vote for the Brexit party in a European election if I want to push the agenda for Brexit. But then when you have to be bedfellows with these people in actual policy making, where you have to support them in rights violation legislation, then I would be very, very careful on what to do. Of course, unfortunately, as we know, these people who want to violate all sorts of rights are everywhere. So that, again, that's the thing with politics.
But hold on, let's get to the core of it. Okay, you're with the party, right-wing party, they're going to support a government. Is that government going to violate more or less rights because you're in it? I think that's the question you have to ask yourself. Are they going to violate more rights or less rights? Or they're going to give
but it's what you said. If they want to introduce abortion, for example, it's one thing of someone saying, look, I'm a Catholic, I don't agree, but I understand it's an issue of individual choice, whatever. But if that person says, I'm going to do that, then I see all kinds of red flags that this person then is going to, next day, he's going to want to impose something else on people's life. Anyway, but again, abortion is not something that I want to discuss now because it's an issue that is way more, is above today's topic. But I think that the difficulties becomes clear that what if you agree with someone on one very central and big topic, but you disagree on something which is also very central, but it's not the main issue on the political agenda, as it is, for example, the European Union issue.
But
Mark, any final thoughts on all that?
Well, I was just going to say, I think you see the effects of those compromises in what constitutes the Republican Party today with respect to abortion and the entrance of Christianity into politics. These were things that Rand warned Barry Goldwater about and said, these are going to tear apart. These are essential contradictions that are going to eventually undermine your message. It's the reason she didn't vote for Reagan was because of his pro-life stance. That one little thing, even though he may have said a million other positive things, or at least things that were consonant with her point of view with respect to economics, that one little thing infects everything after a while. We see it literally saturating the Republican Party to the extent now that nobody who's secular, and scientifically oriented has any desire to go to that side of the party.
Right. So before we move it to Clubhouse, Gernaz, why don't you tell us where people can find you? So you're doing political commentary on YouTube. At the same time, you spend your time trying to understand political philosophy, trying to understand Ayn Rand's philosophy. So you're someone who's doing various things. So tell us a bit more where people can follow you.
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube, but actually most videos are in Dutch. I have 2 English ones up. Maybe I'll throw this one up. And if anyone wants to debate me, any left-winger, be sure to tell me because I'd love to do it. So hopefully there will be more English content on that channel. It's called Hiernas Online, just like you say it. You can find me there. I also have another channel called Vrijheidsdomein, also a Dutch show, 1 time a week. We go through the week's events from a pro-capitalist perspective. And I could also share my Twitter handle @JerRamaltarsing, where you see me tweeting about America, US, Ayn Rand type of topics. But let people reach out if they want to make some videos in English. That's also fine with me. So good. I'm open to it.
Good fun, good stuff. Okay, also one apology from me to our audience. I didn't keep an eye on YouTube today because, again, usually it's someone else who does it. Anyway, I should own this. I should do this today. I didn't do it. But thank you for your comments. I'm reading all the comments after the show. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, Gernaz. Thank you, Mark. And we're going to continue the discussion on Clubhouse. Again, whenever we talk about politics, it includes very difficult decisions on what is basically, where is the line where beyond that I don't compromise my principles, and where is the line where you say, okay, if you want to make political change, you have to join hands with some people you're not going to like. We didn't solve it today, actually, but it's a difficult topic.
Next time we should pick a topic and then we can make different scenarios.
Maybe. Okay.
To see where to draw the line.
Maybe. Okay. Thanks, everyone, and see you soon in Clubhouse. Bye-bye.